Hello, welcome to the conversation on News Central Television. This is the program where we bring you up to speed with all the political happenings on the African continent. I am Gbenga Aborowa.
And I am Rita Omodia. Today on the conversation, we'll look at situations in Nigeria as preparation for the 2023 general elections picks up pace in Nigeria. Now, all candidates vying for the country's top job have been made to sign a peace pact as part of efforts to set to a free, fair elections.
We'll also be turning our attention to East Africa, where Felicien Kabuga, one of the most wanted suspects and alleged financier of the 1994 Rwandan genocide, has gone on trial at a United Nations tribunal in The Hague.
I must say that this is a season of judgments. We've had the former Burkina Faso leader. We also had our last conversation, Dadis Kamara. And now...
Guinea, and now Felicien Kabuga. So I guess justice might be delayed, but...
28 years after.
It's nice that it's served.
Definitely. Very nice. So we'll begin with situations in Nigeria.
Now, the presidential candidates of all political parties in Nigeria have signed a peace accord committing them to peaceful campaigns ahead of the 2023 elections organised by the National Peace Committee. The nation's capital, Abuja, on Thursday, the chairman of the NPC and former head of state, General Abdulsalami Abubakar, said the candidates must ensure civil and decent campaigns. Speaking on behalf of the political parties, the chairman of the Inter-Party Advisory Council, Yabagi Sani, who is also the flag bearer of the Action Democratic Party, said the candidates are committed to peaceful, free, fair and credible elections.
Now, some of the candidates that signed the accord were Atiku Abubakar of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, Peter Obi of the Labour Party, as well as Rabiu Kakwanso of the New Nigeria People's Party, NNPP. Omoyele Shore, the candidate of African Action Congress, and the only female candidate in the race, Chichi Oje, representing the Allied People's Movement, APM, also appended their signature to the Peace Pact alongside other candidates. 18 recognized political parties are fielding candidates in the February 25 election, and the signing of the Peace Pact came a day after campaigns opened for the presidential and National Assembly elections. Now, joining us for this conversation, we have Jide Barrister Jide Ologun. He's a legal practitioner and a vice president at Top Foundation, Jide Ojo, executive director, OJA Development Consult. Gentlemen, welcome to the conversation.
Thank you very much.
So I'll begin with you, Jide. For the 2015 general elections, a group led by former head of state General Abdulsalami Abubakar and Bishop Matthew Hassan Kuka of the Catholic Diocese of Sokoto put up a peace accord signed by political leaders to ensure a violence-free exercise. It was also repeated for the 2019 elections. Now, judging from past elections, can we say that the essence of the peace accord has been achieved and maintained by political parties and candidates in Nigeria? Or can we say it's just a glamorous signing ceremony like we saw yesterday?
You know, it was a good thing that the candidate signed to allow peace reign. If you step back a bit to 2011, we are one of the candidates who is our president today, that if going to create chaos or activate chaos in the nation,
okay, Barrister Ologun will try to okay, we're still having difficulties with your audio, but I would like Jide Ojo to please answer this question. Looking at the essence of this peace accord maintained by the political parties and the candidates, judging from past elections, can we say that the essence of this peace accord has been maintained, or it's just a glamorous signing ceremony?
It all depends on how you what benchmark you are using to gauge. And we know that in 2015, when this came, arising from the 2011 post-election blues that claimed over 800 lives, according to the Human Rights Watch, this became imperative. May the soul of Kofi Annan rest in peace. He was part of those who, the wise men that put together the first peace accord for Nigeria with General Abdulsalami Abubakar, Bishop Hassan Kuka, and the rest of them. However, given the fact that the post-election blues that was expected to greet the change of power in 2015 did not happen, I will say to a very large extent, the peace accord has achieved and is achieving its set objectives. If you recall that 2015 was a watershed, it's an epochal event in Nigeria's political history since 1922, where we started this journey. It was an election where an incumbent was defeated at the level of the presidential election. We have had election being considered at the state level by governorship candidates, but it has never happened at the federal level that the election will be contested and there will be no fallout, negative fallout. So to that extent that we have a peaceful transition where an incumbent lost election and still congratulated the winner. I'm talking of Dr. Goodluck Jonathan losing the election in 2015 and congratulating and conceding defeat. That, to an extent, shows that this peace accord is achieving its set objective. You also see that as against having it only at the federal level in 2015 and 2019, now we have peace accord being signed at the state level. For some of the off-cycle governorship elections, we saw ahead of the elections where the candidates also signed peace accord. If it had not worked at the federal level, I'm not sure that would have been desired at the state level. And what happened yesterday was very instructive. I have been part of meetings where the National Peace Committee, through the Kuka Center, have invited us some months back and said, okay, what do you think should change with this peace accord? And part of the takeaway from that meeting, I recall, was that the peace accord was being signed only on the eve of election, the Thursday preceding the election on Saturday. That is coming too late. Why don't you have the peace accord signed well ahead, particularly before the onset of campaigns? Because what you want to see is not just peaceful election, you also want to see peaceful campaigns. You want to see campaigns that will be devoid of brickbats, that will be devoid of assassination attempts of political opponents. We want to see a very peaceful and itch-free campaign. We want to see an issue-based campaign. If these are to be desirable, then you need to have this peace accord signed even before the commencement of campaigns. And I think that takeaway was needed, which is why we saw what happened yesterday, where just at the beginning of the campaign season, these gladiators, these political gladiators were made to sign the peace accord. And it has been said that another peace accord will actually be signed, the traditional one, on the eve of the election. That's on Thursday preceding the 2023 presidential
Thank you very
election.
much, Jide.
So,
I'd like to bring
to a
in
very large
Barrister
extent, it's
Ologun.
working, yes.
Now, Barrister Ologun, this is the 23rd year, if I'm not mistaken, of our uninterrupted democratic experience. Elections are a civic exercise, but yet some people see it, especially in this part, as a do-or-die affair. What are some of the causes of violence during the electioneering period?
Yes, for some politicians, it's a do-or-die affair. It's all about winning elections, and that is why the major stakeholders are requesting that the campaign should be issues-based. And when we have issues-based campaign, it must also be extended to issues-based governance. And when we talk about issues, glaringly now, there are challenges we have in the country that must be attended to. let's start from what will help us to even start catching up with the developed countries of the world, which is basically education. Daniel Goleman wrote in 2013 that Singapore has no natural resources, no great army, no special political sway. The secret lies in developing the people, intentionally cultivating the human resource as the driver of the economy. And Singapore, that left Malaysia in 1965, today is one of the best places to live and work in the world. So how will these candidates, when they are given the opportunity to lead Nigeria, attend to education? Right now, the lecturers have been on strike for about 7 months, if not more. What has happened to education in the country? We still have the battle of Boko Haram. And now let's shift to the health sector. How, when, and by what means, by what strategic plan will you ensure that health is available and affordable to the citizens in this country? Let's go to power supply. It amazes us that a country of over 200 million people cannot sustain even 7,000 megawatts of supply of electricity to the citizens. So how do we industrialize? Egypt, for about 5 years running now, has 100% access to electricity. So how do we deal with the oil theft? The Senate president was addressing the nation recently, and he said that the rate of oil theft in Nigeria can send this country to a coma. And yet we have a provision in our constitution, section 14 subsection 2b, that says that the security and the welfare of the people shall be the primary purpose of government. So how do we deal with these issues? How do we go back to the point of unity? Right now, the nation is divided. And that is why you see a prominent factor in this attempted campaigns will be the issue of ethnicity. I mean, I just mentioned Singapore now. What religion is practiced in Singapore? Let's even profile the religions. You want to talk about Christianity. Christianity is the hallmark of the leadership in America, and yet they can provide basic amenities to their citizens. Islam is the hallmark of religion in Saudi Arabia, yet they can attend to their citizens. You talk about the UAE that has created a prosperity hub. So religion is not a problem to them. So how do we handle all this? How do we fight corruption in this? How do you want to go about it? Is it that you are telling us how you will arrest the oil thieves, whether they are military officers or not, whether they are emirs or chiefs or bees or kings anywhere? What strategy are you going to engage to reposition Nigeria?
Okay, but Ologun, sorry to come in here. You've mentioned so many dividing factors now, looking at religion, ethnicity, and even the state of infrastructure and basic institutions going on. Now, still looking at this peace pact that was signed yesterday, is there some kind of legal backing guiding this peace pact and binding these stakeholders from not violating the peace process? Because it's one thing to sign a peace pact, another thing to observe the peace process. Is there a legal backing guiding this?
Absolutely. It's just like when you have a tenancy agreement with your tenant. You sign that agreement with the expectation that the parties will keep to the terms of the agreement. And eventually, the tenant remains in that apartment and refuses to pay rent. So you now have to go to court. And it's worse in the case of government. Because if you look at Chapter 2 of our Constitution, that really spells out the basic responsibilities of attending to the needs of the people. It's not, you cannot sue the government on it. So it's one thing to sign a peace accord, it's another to keep the spirit. And if they don't keep the spirit, how do you go after them? I mean, I actively monitored the 2019 election. I studied the electoral offenses. And I say today that all the electoral offenses were committed during the election. So how many people were prosecuted? That's the big question. So you may sign, because the stakeholders that are signing, they're like the power brokers. But it's a good thing that we have this peace accord, and like it has been brilliantly exposed here today. Look at the 2015 election. There was a threat that if that election was rigged, a particular candidate in 2011 did not win, in 2015, it was going to soak the dogs and baboons in blood. So there, and you even, if you follow the trend, at the point a politician came out that towards that threat, some elements were imported into Nigeria who probably turned bandits eventually when they were abandoned. And so what would have happened if there was no the peace pact signed by the parties? What about if Dr. Ebele Goodluck Jonathan refused to accept the results of the elections? And you will recall, he even congratulated President Muhammadu Buhari, I think before even finishing counting the vote. So that committee played a good role. But beyond the peace accord signed by politicians, how do we hold government responsible to the people? Even though the former president handed over peacefully, and we appreciate him for that, can we claim that we have benefited so much from the fruit of that election of producing a government? So our interest now is even beyond the elections. What do we have after the elections? How do we hold them accountable? And it is very important. But we expect that as they sign to allow peace, they should allow peace. And if they do not allow peace, we should have a system in place that we keep them in order so that we don't have players that are bigger than the laws of the land. It's not healthy for us. Nigeria needs to move on quickly and join their colleagues on the other side of development.
Thank you very much, Barrister Ologun. Talking about systems that will keep people accountable. No fewer than 870,000 alleged electoral offences were reportedly committed in the 2011 general elections, but the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, was unable to prosecute up to 1% of these cases. Jide Ojo, does this create a culture of impunity? And why would you think the prosecution rate is so low?
Is that for me?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think you need to understand the challenges that INEC faces in prosecution of electoral offenses. When you mention that huge number, you need to situate it against the background that you are talking of people who are engaged majorly in multiple registration, which is actually an infraction or an electoral offense. That's where you have the multitude of over 800,000 and it's still counting. I mean, just recently, INEC was talking about 45% of those who registered during the continuous voter registration exercise between June 28th and December 31st, that about 45% of them had an invalid registration, accounting for arising from multiple registration as well as incomplete registration. And that is why right now the National Assembly is considering what it's called Electoral Offences Commission Bill, which it is believed, actually the Senate has passed that bill since last year, but there is need for consequential amendment by the House of Reps. And that is what is expected that will possibly lay to rest this issue of incapacity of INEC to prosecute electoral offenses, particularly given the paucity of funds. Many of us do not know that, yes, INEC may have received 305 billion for 2023 election, or that it received 189 billion for 2019 elections. You need to understand that, what is not budgeted for cannot be, you can't spend money that is not budgeted for a particular line item, or except you are able to do environment. And while INEC has even calibrated or divided its Department of Legal Services into two, given the fact that we now have a Department of Compliance and then the other legal services, it still is handicapped because there is very, very few lawyers within the INEC. INEC has an estimated 16,500 workforce, and barely 200 of these are lawyers. So INEC had to depend heavily on, outsourcing its legal cases. And unfortunately for INEC too, all pre-election matters involving aspirants who are contesting the nomination of their parties INEC is joined in an exercise that it was not conducted by it. So that in itself has made INEC to be overwhelmed with enforcement of electoral offenses. And it has said time and again that, look, it will appreciate this responsibility be taken off it. Way back in 2008, when the electoral offenses, when the Presidential Committee on Electoral Matters, that's Justice Muhammad Delawa, who's Electoral Reform Committee was set up in August 2007, and they submitted its report in December 2008. Since that time, the recommendation has been made to have Electoral Offenses Commission. It is now that we are having some serious attempts to have this passed into law. Like I said, the Senate has passed it, but the House of Reps is here to do a consequential amendment. And we are hoping that before the 2023 election, if this is passed and the president signs, peradventure we will have more prosecutions of electoral offenders after 2023 elections.
All right, thank you so much. We're looking at electoral offenses, electoral offenders. Now, during the peace accord, there was so much talk about fake news, personal attacks, issue-based campaigns, and all of that. Now, notably absent, Barrister Ologun, among the candidates, we had the ruling party's candidate, Bola Ahmed Tinubu. He was absent at the peace pact while others were there. Now, we also remember that during the NBA conference, Bola Ahmed Tinubu was also not there. Do we see a handwriting on the wall, and do you feel it was reasonable or not for Bola Tinubu to not be there when other candidates were present at the peace pact?
You know, basically, I was also concerned, and I personally made inquiries from those very close to the candidate, and who confirmed to me that, yes, he's in the UK and all is well with him. And it's part of what we are saying here. You know, these requirements must be strengthened. As we speak right now, I doubt if there is a law in place that emphasizes the fact that this particular person must be the one to show up, to sign the document. So in the absence of that, perhaps the vice presidential candidate can be put in place. And that's what we are saying. Laws are made for the people. So let's get serious with our processes. Let the system be put in place. I appreciate all we have said here today, talking about the National Assembly that makes law for the nation. Section 4 of the Nigerian Constitution, 1999, as amended, says that the National Assembly shall make law for the peace, order, and good governance of Nigeria. So we should expect that these specifics be covered. So this is a gap now that must be carefully studied. And going forward, what do you expect? What extent of seriousness do you expect from candidates? Then reduce it into law. And having reduced this into law, make sure that the laws are implemented. Or like we said, there's another opportunity to sign again, and we hope he'll be available. And like I said, from my inquiries, the campaigns are expected to have started now. And of course, you should be actively involved in the campaign. So let's keep our fingers crossed as we monitor the trends as they go. But basically, we are at a breaking point in the nation where we are seeking for resourceful leaders who we engage our resources to create commonwealth for common good. But we are monitoring, and in public relations, all these actions will influence electorate. So the candidates themselves also must be wary of how they present themselves to the electorate.
Thank you very much, Barrister Jide Ologun and Jide Ojo. We do appreciate your time and contribution to the program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're watching The Conversation on News Central Television. We'll go on a quick break, and when we return, we'll be looking at the trial in The Hague of Felicien Kabuga, one of the last wanted fugitives that was tried. He's been tried for his role in the 1994 Rwandan genocide.